Hailing from our very own Brooklyn, New York, BK all day, our guest today is a TV host, style expert, and producer who has worked on networks from TNT to NBA and Bleacher Report. You can catch him on air, supporting causes he cares about, or cheering on his favorite team at a big game. We're going to take it courtside with one of the coolest guys I know, Lance Fresh. And be sure to stick around because we have a really cool post-game chat with a Brooklynet. Okay, Lance, let's get into this. So just so you know, you're our first guest on this podcast. It's exciting because we just got deemed Courtside Conversation. It's called the podcast. I know you have no details. And for you to come on a podcast and not even realize or recognize like what the title was, what we're going to be talking about, I just want to say thank you so much. That's how much love we have for each other. So thank you.
For sure. I heard Brooklyn. I heard Alley Love. I'm like, done. Just so you know, in terms of how we're shaping these narratives and these conversations that are courtside is like, we all have an affinity towards sports and or a team. And most of what attracts people to sport is this kind of concept of being a part of something, right? To be one of many and to create the best lives for ourselves is always aligned with a personal objective. And so whether you are an athlete, an artist, or all of our favorite people, from the yits to championship moments, I mean, from things that happen in our lives to the pitch, to the court, to the field, we all know that we just want that W. And the win can look different for everyone, but in the game of life, it is available to us all. So thank you so much for joining Courtside Conversation. Lance Fresh, you are a TV personality. You're a host. I mean, you are the man when it comes to style. You are a fantastic human being and you're a great friend. So I'm excited to have this conversation of what it means to win and, of course, to explore your journey together. Sure, let's get to it. Let's get it.
All right. So I'd like to kind of pop off a little differently instead of just getting into the narrative of your life, which we will discuss and, get into that stuff, to the game time moments. I thought we'd start off with a little bit of what we probably call like our moment, our fire rapid. Are you down for that?
I'm down.
Now, this is not just any fire rapid.
Okay.
Right? It's not called rapid fire. It's called fire rapid. It's not just any. Just know that those words are intentionally changed. Okay. But there are a bunch of questions. So when I say you need to come off the top of the dome, you need to come off the top of the dome.
Okay, I got you.
All right. Okay, here we go. What's your zodiac sign?
Scorpio.
Favorite workout?
Peloton.
All right. Who would play your younger self in a movie?
My younger self, my son would play my younger self because he is the younger me, just a little light skin.
I love it. Night in or night out?
Night in.
Okay. Top 3 artists.
Top 3 artists: Lil Wayne, Jay-Z, and I throw Kid Cudi up there.
Oh, I love that. Morning person or night owl?
Morning person.
Really? You be up late though. Okay. Who was the last person you
texted?
Go ahead.
The last person I texted was my mom.
Oh, shout outs to the moms though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can have dinner with one person, dead or alive.
Dinner with one person. Say my boy Kobe.
Nice. R.I.P. Kobe. Who's your favorite person ever to interview?
I'm going to go with Kobe again.
How would you describe your morning routine? One word.
Routine's just early. It's early. It's very early. When you have kids, it's early.
All right. Which is the best, breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
Ooh, breakfast, because you can eat it at any time. I'm like a breakfast, at lunchtime kind of guy. Not brunch, but breakfast at lunchtime.
Okay, breakfast at lunch, not brunch, to be clear. Yeah. What's the last thing you Googled?
The last thing I Googled was, I don't know. Maybe something, a book. Actually, I just got a new coffee table book, Black Ivy. So I just literally just Googled that and I picked it up from Barnes & Noble's this morning, actually.
Wait, there's a Barnes & Noble's in the world?
Yeah.
right on Court Street.
Oh, in Brooklyn. Honestly, like I only remember that Barnes and Noble's on 14th Street. And then when it was gone, I was like, that's the end of Barnes and Noble's in life. Like I had never seen a Barnes and Noble's in the wild except on 14th Street.
I didn't even know it was gone. See, I'm more disappointed about the movie theater, the Court Street movie theater being taken down this year.
Yep.
But the Barnes and Noble's still standing. So I guess.
I remember Court Street movie theater, but I guess I wasn't looking for books when I be in Brooklyn.
It was right next door. I don't know how you missed that, but it's okay.
I remember that, but never. All right. This is your walkout song. One song that they play when they introduce Lance Fresh.
The song that they play. Damn it. It has to be, I can't think of a particular song, but it's a song off of Black Album. Off of the Black Album. Jay-Z's Black Album. You could just pick a song off of that.
You can shuffle and you good.
Yeah. What's the no, I'm gonna give you one. Sorry. Let me just look through that real quick. I know it's Fire Rapid, but let me look through it real quick and I'll tell you.
Fire Rapid is the thing. No longer are the days of rapid fire, folks.
Okay, it's gonna be my first song.
Okay, there we go. Cheetos or Doritos?
I couldn't hear. You said Doritos. What was the first option?
Cheetos or Doritos?
Cheetos, puffy.
Okay. Your favorite animal?
My favorite animal is a dog. I have a puppy. So dogs, yeah.
And then last question, your favorite designer?
My favorite designer? Man. Say Virgil.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you know, I was just thinking, I was going to say anybody black, you know, but if you look at my closet, it's pretty much, you know, like this is Heron Preston. Like I rarely wear non-black designers. So I'd say somebody like Virgil.
Nice. Well, that was our rapid fire. Thank you so much for playing. It's a great way to get to know you really quickly. Mm-hmm. But let's get to know you a little bit more slowly. Let's start from where you are now. You've done a lot in your career. You broke down a lot of barriers when it came to host, when it came to courtside culture in itself. So a part of that for you was style. In the moment that you are now, looking back over your career, where do you think this all stemmed from?
I think, for me, watching sports, growing up, I only knew ESPN and things like that. So it's like as a former athlete, and, a person from Brooklyn, it's like I cared about sports, obviously, but then being from Brooklyn, it's like, it's just so much culture. It's like, how can I not be cool, right? How can you not be cool being from Brooklyn? So that was the thing that I carried around with me always. But as I kept, watching, I grew up like idolizing people like Ahmad Rashad, and that cool side of sports. And that's something that I always really wanted, I always cared about. And then once you started seeing those things go away, those shows go away, I'm like, man, we need more content like that. So it's like, for me, being that person that was introduced into sports and being able to meet these guys and these young athletes and the Kevin Durant's and those guys who were some of my first interviews, it was kind of refreshing for them to see me, it was like, you're not the typical guy that covers sports. You're rocking Jordans, you look like me, you speak like me. I had to work on my enunciation and things like that, as I'm sure you've perfected already, but I'm still working on that. But it's just things like that, and just kind of like not being that guy, just cool recognizes cool. And I always say that. So I was able to be put in a position where no one looked like me and no one was doing what I was doing. So I was able to stand out. And then, with that came, more respect and responsibility and, just kind of, being up to me to kind of like pave a lane for myself, create a lane for myself. Cause I remember the first time I met you, and I think it was at the Nets bowling thing. So that was like back with D Wills on the team. And, that was fun, and for me, yeah. That was kind of like, like I have friends who see that and they say, oh man, you were around this guy, that guy. And, for us, it's just like, man, we just want to do cool things. We just want to change the culture and we want to be, so I couldn't even really think about it like that, where I'm like, oh, I'm around this 10-time All-Star or this person. I'm like, man, I want to ask this guy about his kicks. I want to ask this guy about, things that are different from, what he's normally asked. Because it's easy to ask, why are you guys on a 5-game losing streak and things like that. And then I would come in and be like, so yeah, what are you planning on wearing? What kicks are you wearing for the All-Star game and things like that? They were like, question that I like. So for me, it was just kind of like removing myself from the moment, I think. And I was just able to kind of like be myself. And I think that's, you don't really get that chance a lot. And I think for me, it was about understanding that we are in a rare situation that we're able to be around the biggest athletes in the world. But it's just a matter of like, taking that leap of faith and talking about the things that they want to talk about. So I think that's kind of where it started for me. And then I just kind of, once I got, my feet in the ground, I was like, all right, cool. Let's do this. Let's keep it pushing.
But when you had the chance to like plant your feet at the free throw line and take your shot, how did you know that this was a viable career option? It's similar. I love that you shared the story of us meeting, because meeting you was kind of like home. I saw somebody to like kind of playing off that. It was for me, real, recognize real. I had no idea what I was doing. I knew you did know what you were doing, but I knew that there was a space that I could feel in terms of, okay, this is sport. As a woman in sports entertainment, as someone who grew up like huge sports fan from a family who were athletes, like how can I make my way into this space and talk about things that are important to everyday fans like myself that may not have ever played or doesn't know the game as well, but appeal to all types of people. And I remember meeting you, and it was very comfortable for me because, one, as a Black woman in this space, it was like good to see another Black person doing something, a young person, and then you did it. And yes, you still are, but even in that moment, so cool. But in terms of this being a career opportunity, most of us don't know what's available to us. I didn't know it was available for me to become a host. I had to figure it out or see people like you at a young age to say, this is an option. So feet are on the free throw line. You're gonna take your shot. There's a free throw is free at this point, unless it's game time, like a couple of seconds at the end fourth quarter. But free throw is free is what I grew up when it came to the game of basketball. Take you a free throw, and that's what you did. But when did you know, as you on the line, when did you know this was a career option for you, that you can make money, you can support yourself, start a family, and actually go forward?
Yeah. So for me, it would have to start back, just going back to college, where I studied to be behind the camera. So I went to school for TV and film production. And, I always wanted to be like the next Spike Lee, the next, I grew up on sets with Spike Lee, as my mom was a teacher, but also an actress and model. So like I grew up around it, and that's when I kind of like fell in love with it. So, I wanted to be like Hype Williams and Little X and, like these folks. So growing up, sports was my avenue, right? It took me to school, and, I played and I competed, and I owe, sports my life because it's like taught me so much. But it wasn't until like I said, I only knew ESPN. So then getting into the business and working in reality TV as a producer, I was like, all right, you know what? I want to find a way to get into sports. And then I found Bleacher Report. And then, this is when Bleacher Report was a startup. They were opening up their video production company in New York because they had started in the Bay. And, just being there in a startup, in a startup, you kind of get to do whatever you want, right? You kind of get to feel things out. You play multiple positions, you wear different hats. And for me, it was kind of like, this is what we should be doing. We should be doing this kind of content. So that once I started seeing these videos go viral from these questions that I'm asking, whether it's me asking Kobe, is he going to get 10 assists and in an All-Star game, and he, his reaction going viral, or, me going to Swaggy P's house and like looking at his shoes before it was like actually a thing. Once these things started blowing up, and I started hearing, from the founders of the company, Dave Finocchio, he's like, man, you need to be on camera. And I'm like, wow. I'm like,
wait, Lance,
I could end up being,
Wait, Lance, take me back to that moment of, how did you get this job? What was that moment of like, okay, securing that spot to create?
So the last reality show I worked on was Project Runway All-Star season 1. And, after that, I was kind of like done with reality. I'm like, I can't do this. I worked for 30 days straight, no days off. I was away from my son. Like it was a lot. And I was just like, man, I need to find something else. So in the meantime, one of my friends, Gary Forbes, another Brooklyn guy, played with the Nets for a little short time. Mm-hmm. He was one of the athletes who had diabetes, who, overcame the odds and made it. So for me, I was just around him shooting things. And that's the only experience I had. And like, I had my camera, I was editing some videos for him, and we were like working on like a documentary for him. And that was my only experience in sports. So that was like during the lockout year. LeBron, all these guys came to Philly for a lockout game. I went there, literally just sat under the basket, shot the game, shot pictures. Chris Paul, Melo, all these dudes, LeBron. It was a crazy game. And that's the only bit I had of sports anything. So I'm literally just like job hunting. And within doing my research for trying to create this documentary and getting more information about players who had diabetes and things like that, people like Adam Morrison, I found Bleacher Report. So then when I'm on a job hunt, I see Bleacher Report. So I'm like, oh, that's that site that I was on. So that's kind of how I found that, and I applied, and the only sports thing I had to send was my lockout game. So the lockout video that I shot, and, they were just like, oh man, this is dope, come in. And, and I came in and I got the job. And that's, and like I said, at the time, it was just Bleacher Report. Now it's huge, but this was like before Turner, before anything. And, that's how I got there. So when I went to these shoots, I didn't go there to these, Nets events. I didn't go there as talent. I went there to produce and to not be on camera. Lo and behold, my first shoot on camera was with Kyrie. And the only reason that I shot it with him was because he was late. We had mutual friends. He was late to a Foot Locker event. We had mutual friends. And I was like, yo, where's Kyrie? And he's like, he's like an hour late. So I'm like, you know what? I'm here with all these kicks. Let me just do this little sneaker feature on all these kicks that I know about. So it's like all these kicks that are dropping in 2 weeks, for Foot Locker's Week of Greatness. I'm like, let me just do a video. This is the penny. This is the phone posit. This dropped this day, So then that ended up going viral at the time, so it was like 500 views. And that's a video that I just went home, edited it, cut myself, stayed at the office, a little later, posted it, made my own profile on Bleacher Report. And like I said, I'm just a producer at this time. And I posted it and it started going crazy. I sent it to our social team and it was like, oh man, this is great. We're going to post this. And then, I ended up interviewing Kyrie for what I was supposed to be there for the Bleacher Report side, asking the boring, on the court questions. Right. So, so then after that, it was kind of like, oh man, yeah, we need to do more content like this. But it wasn't a thing where it was like, yeah, we want you to be on camera. And then I just kept, finessing and doing my own thing separate from what I was supposed to be doing. Like I was always going to do what I came there to do, but I would do a second video that I would cut and edit myself. Mm-hmm. And then from there, that's kind of how I got, the free reign to kind of like do things. And when I had these conversations with the founders and they were like, man, what else should we do? Because at the time, Bleacher Report's competition were people like SB Nation. I don't think Barstool was even a thing. And like they had their YouTube page. So we were like a YouTube, outlet. So, fast forward to that, as I'm doing more, I'm getting more, reign to do things. Turner acquires Bleacher Report. It's like 2 years later. And then, once Turner comes through, I have a meeting with David Levy, who was the president at the time and who also spent time with the Nets as well. Yeah. He was like, yo, man, we need you on camera. He's like, we need you on camera. We need you to do everything that you want to do, all of your ideas. And then I'm on TNT and NBA TV, and now I'm signing a talent contract. So I want to say that moment, going back to your question, that moment for me where I was like, yo, this is something that's going to change my life is when, I took that free throw, right? It was like, it cost me nothing but time away from my friends to stay after. And I always shout out this editor, Fred Woodland. He stayed there after. He was like, yo, man, what you doing? I'm like, I'm working on this thing. I think we should be doing sneakers and stuff like that. And, I edited it and he took it home for me. And that was the first video. So that was a Thanksgiving. That was a Thanksgiving weekend, right? So like so nobody's in the office. So I stayed after. And it's like, you hear the stories about putting in that extra time. And, like I said, I grew up a Kobe fan and I knew what it takes. And I've won championships in high school and college. And, I know what it takes to put that extra time. But that's what I was doing at that moment, that Friday, that Wednesday, before Thanksgiving. I'm literally putting in 2 or 3 hours in the gym, perfecting what I want to do. And that really changed my life. So for that was like the moment where I was like, and I got that call, that G chat or whatever from the founder of the company. He was like, yo, man, I'm coming into the office, next week. We got to talk about you being talent. I'm like, talent? I'm like, okay, cool. So, it was that was for me, that was the moment. And then, That was like what? Almost 10 years ago. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's creative innovation. I mean, when you think about all the songs that we love, like, I mean, we can quote any line. The first thing that came to mind, obviously Miami, 305, Rick Ross, right? We built it, you bought it, renovated. Like I created the space that you're applying to. That wasn't a job before I was here. I created this space, I built it. And now you get to apply to the job, that title, which is, I mean, it's amazing. Nothing wrong with buying it renovated. You got to get in where you get in and then you start building from there. But what is almost, I mean, I had got goosebumps from this story. It was truly inspiring to hear, because when you look at you and we talk about, oh, that's the cool guy, and before people know your name, even my friends back in the day, it's just more of like, oh, that's the fashion guy. Like we know he has that's the guy with style. He's a host. But before you got some of those titles, right? And you had to literally put in the work. And what we forget is that the favorite rap song or the lines that we live by doesn't always apply to the professional athlete or the professional artist. It applies to all of us, right? All of our favorite people, including you, is that this is your moment to take creative license to, if there's no space for you, let's not get upset about it, but let's create it. And what you did was take that creative initiative, creative innovation, and you did it before, there was even a space for you to do so. So it's inspiring. And it was a reminder for me, even at this point in my career, that it can come easy. I can buy it renovated. I can look for it, or I can just build it. And that's how many things that we're proud to say or proud to have our name on is established. And so one of the things that came up while you were talking, though, is not going to lie, not that I live in fear, but I know it's very common as one who's in front of the camera to someone who's creating something that they know maybe is not in a space yet. How did you deal with fear? I think every athlete, every person who wants that W, when it comes to it, these game time moments, how do you deal with that fear of what if they fire me? What if I take too many creative liberties? Like, what is that internal dialogue like for you?
I think it kind of like goes back to, the reason why I even jumped into sports and how, I felt like I was doing a job. Like, a lot of people work, to survive and to make money. Like we all have to, provide for ourselves. But, a lot of people settle too for jobs and, they're afraid to walk away for things. So I think fear it comes from the struggle, like that's how I overcome my fear. Cause I remember the struggle. I remember not working those 30 days and not, feeling accomplished and looking at the people who, technically I could be is the next step of my career where I'm like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be dedicating this much time to work where I can't see my family, where I'm like stressed out, where I'm, I'm dealing with reality people, and their attitudes and things. I'm like, this is not for me. So for me, understanding that there's some things that are just not in our control. And I think just understanding what's in your control, because like I've, as a PA, I started as a PA and like I've gotten fired from jobs where it wasn't, for no reason, where they just, and I always bring up the story where this woman wanted to hire her boyfriend because he had just lost his job. And it was shady, but it was like one of my like lowest points because I was like, man, I did everything I was supposed to do. And I just got let go, it's like my son's first birthday. What was that?
I was like, well, I hope they still together. If she hired her boyfriend.
I know, right? I'm like,
worked out.
And it's funny because I ended up seeing another woman who was like at the company a few years later. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. I'm like, yeah, thanks. But those are things that I'll never forget. So it's like from those situations, I think it's just always a matter of, one, knowing your worth. Two, taking care of the main thing. Because as a creative, I always say when I started like influencing and doing these side brands, I was kind of different from a lot of my other friends who were influencers because they didn't have a solid, steady job, right? Like I had Bleacher Report. That was like my main thing. So everything I do is on the side. So for me, it was just a matter of taking care of the main thing and understanding that, but just learning the business, knowing what can happen, not getting too caught up in the lifestyle, that we could get caught up in,
Wait, like hold on. Let's time out. What does that mean? I mean, for those of us that don't know, getting caught up in the lifestyle, what did that look like? What are those options?
I mean, I think it's so easy to, there's like it's like a gift and a curse, right? Of having these friends who are professional athletes, right? And, you know, if you're around them, you might feel the need to try to look like them and go out your way to live the lifestyle that isn't yours. And that's one thing I never really wanted to cater to. And I never did cater to because, you know, when I first, you know, I got my biggest check, I didn't go buy a watch. I didn't go buy a chain. Like I bought the place that I'm living in right now. You know what I mean? So I became a homeowner, you know, in my mid 20s, you know, which is huge. And that just comes from just understanding, you know, within like things will come within time. And it's like not getting caught up in that lifestyle, because then you really start pushing things so that you are more worried about if you lose this job because you're not being responsible with your things and you're not being true to who you are. And I think that's just one thing that I just always I needed to maintain. You know, like we all are different. Like everyone has a different lifestyle, you know, contrary to what you'll see on Instagram. You know, we always say Instagram isn't real life, and it's not. So I think for me, it was, you know, it's just getting caught up in that lifestyle. And, you know, we talk about the late nights and things like that. And that's part of it. That's part of the job, right? That's literally part of the job, as people might not understand. But, you know, people are like, oh man, you travel and, you know, it's great. And I'm like, I'm tired, right? Like I'm not going to say it on Instagram, like, hey guys, I'm tired. You know, I don't really want to be doing this video, but I got, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's a lot of give and take. And that's something that I just had to kind of like learn over the years, just literally just like hankering down and like making time for the things that you care about and the things that deserve the time. Because like I said, it's easy to get caught up in that lifestyle. So yeah, so it's like, for me, it's just like not getting caught up in that lifestyle where I'm not in a position to be afraid, you know, because I know I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm always going to do my job. I'm always going to do what when I'm being paid for, whatever it is. So it's like, as far as fear, it's like, man, you work for these companies, these big corporations, and they don't want you to, you know, people always say know your worth. And that's so true, because they don't want
you. Know your worth and add tax.
Facts, for real. And it's like, they don't, you know, I've been a part of companies where they don't want to hear what you have to think. They don't want to hear from anyone else because they don't want to give credit. They don't want to pay people more. So I think it's the more and more you research, the more and more you understand where you want to be. Like at that time when I was in reality, I knew I didn't want to be there. I knew my trajectory wasn't there, you know. And then there was a time where I was at Bleacher Report, and I knew that's not my trajectory. You know, as talent, you know, I'm not like other talent. I produce all of my content. Like there's no one writing anything on the teleprompter for me. You know what I mean? So it's a give and take, and it's just like knowing your worth, knowing where you want to be. So it's like for me, when I talk to these kids and I go to their high schools and, you know, these young kids, and they ask me, you know, how do I do it? And I'm like, man, the one thing, you know, you got to do is research, not only about what's out there and like what kind of content, because that's what I did. I was like, all right, nobody's doing this, nobody's talking about that, and that's where it started. But then, you know, just researching on yourself and like understanding like what you care about and how you'd be most valuable, you know, to this company. And, you know, so knowing your worth is huge, but I always say research is everything. So
something you said about social, like Instagram, I for a while I was saying social media and Instagram's not real life, or TikTok's not real life. But what I stopped recently saying, Lance, is that it is real life. Like if I'm spending my time in it and on it and creating for it, then it is real life. And I think just crossing that boundary to understand, like, if this is life, am I happy with my life? Is this how I want to spend my life? And I think that for me was a shift in what social media, or the role that social media played and the time that it took up. Because not only do I look at it as like, this is real life and I spend time on this and that time is valuable, to your point, right? And so I had to like stop telling myself that social media is not real life. I get that it's a type of narrative that's told, but the time that's attached to it is a part of my life. But I want to continue with this, like these game time moments. If you can, define struggle.
And within my career,
any capacity, define struggle for Lance. Struggle is.
I guess struggle is, you know, understanding what, you know, struggle is not being heard. I think. I think that's like the biggest thing. It's like understanding that, listen, if I just had this shot, if I just had this chance, things would change. And you know, for me, it happened more often than less, where I would pitch an idea, or I know something is cool, and, you know, no one really hear it, or I wasn't in a position to really get it out there. And it just dies. And I think that's a huge struggle, because it takes a hit on your confidence. You feel like you had it right, and it's just like not being able to be heard is tough. It's tough to rebound. And it's like you hear these stories about, people pitching shows, or you look at Issa Rae and all the success she's had, and, Nicola Cole and things like that. It's like being told no shouldn't be it, but it is a lot for people. It's for a lot of people, because it's tough to be like, man, if they're saying no, then maybe I need to change this. Maybe I need to do that. And, criticism is constructive criticism is great. But, I think that's the biggest thing, just not being heard and not being respected in your space. That's struggle. And I think that goes for everyone. So for me, those are the moments in my life where I was like, man, I really know this is what we should be doing, and then, with my, once I started doing these great videos, and, then you get more trust with things like that. But even with that, a few years ago, I was dealing with that. At that point in my career, 8 years into my career, selling shows, creative, successful campaigns, things like that, consulting with brands, things like that. There's been times where I've been with companies and I'm like, they don't understand that this is cool, but you know what? I'm going to end up doing it anyway. And then and I've done it, and I'm still doing it. So that's struggle.
That's struggle. Yeah. You've grown up in front of the camera. You've seen you over the years, where you started your career, where you are in your career. You're still on camera, still a public figure. Your viewership has increased over the years. How do you deal with that?
I think, over these past few years, and obviously, 2020 was a huge break for everyone, where, we just all had to lock in, right? We had no choice but to lock in. And, I always go back to 2020, teaching me a lot about myself, about the things that I care about not necessarily needing to be on social as much, because as you know, as you said, we say it's not real life. And I say it's not real life because I'm going to, I'm going to get off this camera, and I'm going to take off my hat, and I'm walking around doing my thing, right? We don't got something following us, so you don't see everything, right? You know what I mean? And that's one thing I always wanted to separate, was my work from my personal life. I never ever wanted, my Instagram is not for, my son and, mom, wifey. That's not what that's for. Mm-hmm. And that's always been a thing for me. So I think, for me, it was just knowing when to take a break, knowing when, you need to just settle down and take a break. Because, I'm, as you are as well, we're on the road twice a month, 3 times a month. You know what I mean? And it's you have to have people in your life that understand that. So for me, it's just a matter of understanding when you need a break, understanding when you need to focus on the things you care about. I go on social media breaks where I'll disable my Instagram, where it's just I just need to be away from it and just lock in on things. And it works every time, because I get to focus on, the things that I care about. I seen friends, the other day, and they're like, oh, you off Instagram right now? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, well, how does that affect your? I'm like, I don't work for Instagram. You know what I mean? All that happens, I get campaigns. That's cool, but I turned down a lot of campaigns, so I'm like, you just need to, and that's the mindset that I think we got to get out of. We don't need that. The Instagram crashes for a day and everybody's panicking. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? The world crashes in 2020. And, unfortunately, there were some people who lost their jobs, had no means of income, but it's that goes back to that whole fear thing, and being prepared and putting yourself in situations that you don't have to, and I'm fortunate enough to do that, where I'm always thinking ahead. I'm always thinking forward. And that goes back to that, not being in that lifestyle, living that, not getting too caught up in that lifestyle, because tomorrow isn't promised. All this can end. And we've seen it. We've seen it when there's no TV, there's no, content being created. It gets tough for some people. During COVID, I was creating content. I was blessed enough to be shooting Samsung commercials and creating content, with Samsung. So, for me, it's just a matter of just always thinking ahead and not really pitting on your eggs into one barrel, because, being at a company like Bleacher Report for so long, for 9 years, it's easy to get kind of caught up in that and be all right, this is all I'm doing. This is all I really care about. This is my, security. this is my security. And then leaving there, leaving a company like that, like people won't understand that. They won't just like, why would you leave VR? Like they're lit. You've been rocking there for so long. It's like, because, it goes back to that struggle. When you stop being heard and things get more corporate and it's so business and the creative is being jeopardized. And it's like, you have to kind of like do what's best for you. And, for me, it's worked out to the point where I leave that company and then I have, one of the greatest point guards of all time, Chris Paul, reach out to me and say, yo, man, I see you left this company. Mind you, me and Chris, like, we just know each other, right?
Chris is great, by the way. Yeah. Like, I agree.
Yeah.
We know these players from being around them for so many years, 12 years. Like this story to me is exactly what the connection is all about. Building that the Courtside Conversation is all about what you're about to share, which I'm a huge fan of. So please keep going.
So yeah, there's players who I go to their homes, I go on vacation with them, I go to their weddings and things like that. And Chris isn't one of them, but he's someone who I respect and respects me. And we've like spent time creating content over the years. And he's like, yo, man, I'm invested in this network. I wanted to bring you on and I want you to head up all creative and, give you equity in the company. And we're going to build this thing out. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, let's like,
I bet.
What is it? You know what I mean? And from there, so now I'm over at Players TV, which is the first athlete-owned TV network. And, at this point, it's been about 2 years. At this point, we're in almost 300 million homes. We're in airports and hotels, ton of apps and things like that. But we're just building, and I'm creating, helping these players create content for themselves and own their IP. And it's for me, I've always had the best interest of the player. And I always say, I'm not in the business of business. I'm in the business of people. And that's kind of like, you look at it, I literally just got my last job through a relationship, through someone, respecting me and keeping that. And it's always keeping in mind that I'm not going to be a company person. I'm going to be a person. So, even when there were situations with contracts or things like that, I always, fight back. I'm like, no, we're not, I have access to go to Steph Curry's home and we're not attaching a liquor brand to it. You know what I mean? Those are things that I have to fight back for, which I did successfully. But it's just like things like that, just like understanding who the players are, because it's all what no one understands is it's a reflection of you. So if you have a relationship with someone and you bring them there and you're connecting them with a company, even though they're getting some money attached to it, they're going to look at you crazy. Like, how could you assume that I would ever do anything with a liquor brand?
Yeah.
I'm Steph Curry, like that. So it's like, they don't understand where it's like, these are relationships, because you leave that company, guess what? They're still going to remember the way you did them. And then for the next company that you actually have ownership in or whatever it is, how could they trust you? So yeah, with Players TV, it's kind of like a breath of fresh air. And for me, it's kind of like exactly where I want to be, because, going back to my conversation of me not just being just talent, I just love to create. I love to help others create. I love to help everybody look good. So, the people who I look up to now, at the time when I was growing up, I was looking up to the Craig Sagers. And, when I was at Turner, they were like, hey, do you want to do sideline? I'm like, I don't. I'm like, I really don't. I'm like, I don't want to chase around coaches. And no, this is not my thing. I want to do something cooler than that. So like, the people who I look up to in the industry are people like Nick Cannon and Ryan Seacrest, and, the people who are playing both sides, who can literally do both and just chill. Because, when it's all said and done, it's like, I don't want to just do it for me. I want to do it for everyone. So it's like when I'm on these calls with, Kyrie's and Dames and DeAndre's, helping them create their shows, and the Travis Kelce's and Ken Griffey Jr.'s and legends, it's like, for me, it's kind of like surreal. And now I think I'm kind of like starting to like understand it, because, it's easy to hear your family say, oh man, you just did a shoot with, Kobe and this person. And I'm like still in shock. So now, as 10 years later, I'm kind of like starting to understand it. And it's like, it's becoming more meaningful to me to really do the best job that I can do and not let people down, not let my people down. So
love it. Let's step into instant replay. It's the SFR: one success, one failure, and one risk that you've experienced. So you can go in any order, but usually it's the success, the failure, and the risk.
Okay, success. I guess it would have to be, taking that free throw, as you said, that would be my one success, and just taking a shot on myself and editing, my own video. Wasn't too much risk involved in that, so I won't say that's a risk.
Failure.
Trying to think. I guess it would have to go back to something just a matter of me not properly understanding the business. So whether that's like signing with a wrong agent, an agent just being hasty, thinking I need an agent, or whatever it was. So I think it's just like those are the things I would consider their learning experiences, because they say, you don't have failures, you have lessons, right? That's what they say. So that's what I would think it would be. Just me learning the business throughout this time and just understanding who has your best interests. So
and your risk,
and then the risk. I think it's always a risk when you're trying to do something new, trying to do something that hasn't been done before, and so I always try to do that. So just doing things that I know is cool, even though I was told no. I'd say one of my biggest ones that I did that turned out to be great was BR Kicks when I was at Bleacher Report, and I created BR Kicks, and they didn't want me to, and I did it. And then there was a meeting about me doing it, and they weren't happy with it. But now it's like literally 4 million followers, is bigger than their actual page. So that was a risk, because it was kind of like risky to like go out there in a company and make a page without permission after they pretty much said no. So that was a risk. I mean, that's something they could have fired me for in hindsight, right? Like it's like using intellectual property or something like that. So that was probably one of the bigger risks I took. But when you know.
When you know. All right, this is my last question, because I do appreciate your time. You have done so much, and there's so much more you can and are doing. How do you define, like, what is your metric for success? When do you look at your life, or how do you look at your life and say, job well done?
I think for me, are you asking like at the end, when it's all said and done, like, all right, I killed that? Like, is that?
Yeah. Like, how do you define success? What does success look for Lance Fresh? Success looks like?
I think it's like just doing, being able to do things on your time. I mean, everyone always wants to be a boss. I don't want to be a boss. Like I want to be my own boss. You know what I mean? Like I'm not, like, I don't want to, like, because, and I always say that, and I am some people's bosses, but I like to, if I'm going to be your boss, I need to have brought you on, because I expect greatness. I expect hustle. I expect how I move. So that's why I say, some people might not understand that and might not have that effort. So for me, it's just like not having to worry. I think having things like, let me start over, like work shouldn't be work. And that's what people always say, like, man, your work is just so fun. And I'm like, yeah, I don't consider it work. Like I consider it fun for sure. And I think that's when that's success for me. It's like not having to feel like, oh, I got to get up and do this, like being excited. Like I was excited to do this today. I'm excited to work on, the other shows and projects I'm working on. I'm excited for meetings. Like I had a meeting with, a call with like my agent, lawyer today. And I was excited for that. You know what I mean? Because there's good things coming with that. So for me, success is just like not, doing things your way, not having to ask for permission. Like we go back to that struggle, and that struggle is not being heard. So success is being the voice. It's not about being heard, being the voice, being the decider, being the one that can make moves, and that's kind of like what I've been working towards, my whole career. And it's like, if you gradually get there, you get there. So like success for me is I guess being that voice, being the decider, and, doing it your way.
Well, you keep doing it your way, Lance Fresh, because we are all fans, and from what you create, we benefit. And I want to thank you so much for joining me at this Courtside and having this conversation, because you're truly incredible, really.
Of course. And thanks for having me. And, Ali, I'm so proud of you. It's like, I get people hitting me up like, oh my God, I see Allie Loves follows you. How do you know her? Oh my God, I go to her class. Like, I'm like, yo, I'm proud. And I always tell you every time I see you, I'm like, yo, I'm proud of you. Like you bossed up, you know?
Thank you.
So thanks for having me. And I'll see you.
It's people like you. And again, it's very few of us in this space. So knowing you for so long and meeting me with open arms and always there for me. Anytime I have a question or request, can you hop on my podcast? As you've done now, the answer has always been yes. And we reciprocate that. And so from afar, I know the love and appreciation is mutual, and it is an absolute pleasure. Like, I'm here for you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They're bringing the hype to over 18,000 fans at Barclays Center on any given night at a Brooklynettes game. They are some of the most talented dancers, breakers, and tumblers in all of Brooklyn. I mean, really in all of the world. And their energy is always on 100. Let's go ahead and take it post-game for this chat with the Brooklynettes and Team Hype. What's up, everyone? So we are doing a post-game conversation. We have Kristen, who is one of our Brooklynettes here at Barclays Center. And I'm so thrilled because while these are short conversations, I think the insight that you're going to provide is so important. As someone who's a former NBA dancer and started there, I have so much respect. And I've seen you for so many years now, so many seasons, but I have so much respect for what you offer on the court. Really quickly, I'd love to know, how did you get into dance and how did you choose dance as your career?
So I started dancing when I was really little. I started dancing at 3 years old. My mom put me in dance class. And, I tried sports. I tried soccer, basketball, but I wanted to dance. I knew that I just wanted to stick with dance. I grew up at my local dance studio in White Plains. I took tap, jazz, ballet, and hip hop. Performed all over Westchester County, got lots of opportunities to perform in New York City, got to perform even at Madison Square Garden. And that's where I really fell in love with, okay, I think I want to be a pro dancer when I grow up. And then as soon as I turned 18 years old, I started auditioning, and I knew that I wanted to be a professional dancer, especially for an NBA team. And that's when I fell in love with the Brooklynettes. So that's kind of how I got my start. And I also danced in college at St. John's. So just been dancing for my whole life. Now,
Brooklynettes, how long have you been on the team?
I just finished my 5th season.
Yes, it's been a while. We've seen each other for almost 5 years now. Incredible. So let's talk about the audition. Auditions are coming up, and I feel this is a great way to give insight to those folks that are not only just auditioning for NBA teams, and not just for the Brooklynettes, but just in general, because I don't think that many people speak to dancers. Most times in this podcast, when I say we talk to artists, athletes, and all of our favorite people, as a former dancer, dancers are some of my favorite, if not my favorite people. And it's because you have that curiosity, you have that awareness, you have that discipline that you learn through this art form. So you're 5 seasons on the Brooklynettes and you go into audition. I don't know if I was at I was at some of the auditions, but I remember, just 500 girls, 300 girls coming into a room to audition. Walk me through the nerves of the first day, because it's a multiple day audition, but walk me through the nerves and the experience of the first day. You're like, I'm definitely doing this. I want to become a Brooklynette.
Yep.
And now it's in the morning. You've lined up, you filled out your form, you have your number.
Yep.
What is Kristen feeling?
All those things. I just get really excited. I think, it's a lot of buildup and you're super nervous as the days lead up to it. And then once that day comes, I'm usually super excited. I'm like, all right, let's just do this. You've been dancing your whole life. This is your bread and butter. Just go for it. Just be confident and just give it all you got. I mean, definitely nerves are there for sure. And I always say, if you're not nervous, that means you don't care. And, I care a lot. So I'm always going to be nervous, but I think that excitement kind of just motivates me throughout the entire process. It's a 4-day long process and it's tiring and it's a mental game as well as a physical game. But, you have your teammates, you have all of these amazing women and talented women around you. And I think that's what's so awesome about auditions too. You meet so many people. And even if at the end of the day, you don't make the team, it's still just such an amazing experience. So you just go through all these different emotions. But at the end, you're like, wow, I really did that.
So there's a form of going across the floor, then you break down, learn choreography. Was there ever a moment, and maybe this wasn't the first day, but throughout the 4 days, was there ever a moment that you messed up? And if so, how did you recover?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm trying to think. There's many times where I've probably forgotten the choreography, especially on day 2. That's like where you get tested like crazy. You learn a combination pretty quickly, and then you're expected to just go right away in groups of 2 to 4. So the nerves are really, really high. But if you forget the choreography, just keep going and just improv. That's what they always look for. I'm trying to think of a moment where I really totally messed up, but I would probably just say it's a lot of instances where it's just a little bit of a blank, memory blank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember one time, this was when I was on the team, like I was on an NBA team, and I remember being on the court and we're in the middle of a performance. Like we're literally in the middle of the dance, and it's a 60-second to 75-second dance. And it's a moment where there's a ripple. Mm-hmm. And so a ripple is, for those of you that don't know, it's basically when like a group of folks will go first, a second group will follow second and third, and so on and so forth. And so there was a ripple happening, and I was the fourth ripple, the fourth and final ripple. Mm-hmm. And the point of it was we were laying down with our hands folded across our chest on the ground. And the ripple was kip up. A kip up is basically when you kick your legs into the air and you land on your feet. So one of my favorite parts of the thing. And when I auditioned, I did not know how to do a kip up, which was a part of my audition. And I had to learn. So at this point, I've mastered this really difficult moment. This is my second season on the court. So I'm seasoned. I'm a professional. And I lay down, and you're counting the music. And Kristen and friends, y'all, I decided to fall asleep. Like, I literally think I fell asleep. Like, I don't know what happened, but my mind just went to a different place. And I blacked out. And I'm still on the floor as my group kips up. Everybody is standing and dancing. And for some reason, I like open my eyes and I'm like, I have to like literally put my hands on the ground and get up and finish the choreography. Oh. And I will never forget that moment of I kept going. I mean, you got to do push-ups. I know when y'all mess up on the Brooklynettes, you have to do push-ups or burpees after your mess up, depending, and the amount depends on how bad the mess up was. And in my case, it was almost 100 because it was so bad. But it's those moments that shape you, that allow you in real time experience to pivot. Yeah. What do you think at this point in your career, because y'all are about to audition, so I assume you're going back on the team. You have to re-audition. Everybody has to re-audition. Yep. What so far has been one of the biggest lessons you've learned from being a Brooklynette?
Oh, I love this question. I think the biggest thing that I've taken away so far is just believing in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, everyone around you isn't going to believe in you. So I think that's definitely something that I have had to learn as I've gone on my track. And, starting out, I feel like you just grow so much as a woman. So I would even say just confidence and believing in yourself, and just don't stop. I really think you're around all of these amazing women, and everybody has something to offer, and you learn so much from all of them. But I would say my biggest takeaway so far from being on the Brooklynettes is always believing in myself.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for our post-game chat here at Courtside Conversation. I think that insight is so valuable to those that are looking to audition or just need a little boost and a pick-me-up of some great words. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and it's always a pleasure hanging out with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Allie.